All right, all right. Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening to you, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Daring Dialogues Black Table Talk Edition. I am your host, Shantae Charles, and we have with us tonight a very special guest joining us, and I'm really, really excited about what we're going to get into tonight. Most of you know that we have been on our sabbatical and our break, so we are not officially back yet. We'll be back in September, but I wanted to make sure that we came out and shared this music and this experience and this talk with you all tonight. So, joining us, we have artist and author Royce Lovett. Let me just give you a little bit of background because this does not really do justice to all that Royce does, but it's a little bit. So we're gonna share this with you. Royce is a singer, songwriter, storyteller, speaker, and author of The Way of Asking. His work sits at the intersection of creativity, curiosity, faith, and justice, inviting people to slow down, ask better questions, and discover deeper ways of seeing themselves, others, and the world around them. For more than a decade, Royce has used his music, storytelling, and community building to create spaces where honest conversations can flourish. Whether performing on stages around the world, leading creative communities, or writing books and songs, his work is driven by a simple belief. The quality of our lives is shaped by the quality of the questions that we ask. So, we're going to get into it this evening. And the work that we're going to be looking at is the book, The Way of Asking, which, to my understanding, is out now. It came out June 19th, correct?
Yes, June 19th was the official date, and then we had to like wait just a little bit because I'm new to this, and so it came out just a few days later with the hard copies, and I'm really excited about it. Hello, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's good to have you here. Royce and I go back some years back to our breaking ground and sort of stomping ground in the state of Florida, and it has been a joy and a pleasure to just see how your career, your music career, has blossomed, how you've grown and matured as a human being, as a father, as a husband. I think the last time that I saw you in person, you were right at the new husband stage. And, life has been rolling and rolling and increasing. And your joy has been added to, and I know has been made full by your three beautiful children. And so I know that as you've grown as a human being, as you've grown as an artist, as you've grown as a husband and a father, I know that some way that experience is shown throughout your new work. So tell us about your inspiration for your EP series, From the Ground, and
Mhm.
also about your book, The Way of Asking. And you can start with whichever one you want.
Thanks so much. Well, since you asked about from the ground, I'll start there. Uh, Healing. I think we find so many different things from the ground, and I think all of those things lead to healing. I think that um, healing is something that we don't talk enough about. How to do it, when to do it, uh, what it requires of us, what's the work that you put in to heal. And I think that's something that I had to learn myself. I wrote this poem called The Two Siblings, and throughout the EP, you'll hear glimpses of this poem. And it talks about really, folks just like us that we we're walking a path, with a best friend that we've someone closer than a brother, a sibling. I don't know. that we've walked many times before, but for some reason we fall and we break our skin, we break, a bone, and we heal ourselves the best way we can. And when they walk out of that woods, there's a decision to go get that wound checked out, which might mean
Mhm.
re-breaking the bone and setting it the right way, which might mean opening up that cut and cleaning it the right way. Or to look at it and say, "Hey, we did that. We survived, and you keep living." And I think healing is the courage to feel pain twice. And I think
Mm.
that's the reason why a lot of us don't take that next step to process healing. So the whole EP series is talking about my healing and where I've come from and and what has brought me to want that so much in my life. I want to see it in my children's life and in my marriage. And so um, the EP's definitely not released yet. I'm working on it. I am working on it with some beautiful people, beautiful individuals. I'm hoping to let you guys know more about that. But in the midst of working on the EP, I found the like healing courage to work on this book, to complete this book that I started in um, like the mid started like putting ideas on paper or typing things out in the midst of the pandemic in 2020. Um,
Mhm.
and all the time, like it kept changing. Like I didn't sit down to write the way of asking because I lost faith or because I sat down it because certainty stopped working.
Mm.
And I think I wanted to, I no, for certain, I wanted to write a book to teach people how to hear God's voice. But as I started writing it in the midst of all the disruptions that were happening in my life, I started noticing that certainty is something that I built my life on, something that, you know, church folk love to build their faith on. It wasn't
Mhm.
anymore. And it felt like I couldn't be honest in my prayer. It felt like like I didn't know how to do that. Um,
Mhm.
and so the inspiration of the book honestly started at a different place. But as I kept writing, I kept learning something different. And then the book turned out to be something completely different than I originally sat down to make. The book actually taught me something. So the inspiration clearly behind the book is when certainty stops working, what do you do then? Which way do you take?
Mhm. And I can't remember who said it. I will say that a gentleman by the name of Dante Stewart, he was a well-known theologian, but more well-known in the social media space for his commentary on Black men, Black life, and the intersection between faith and Black men. I think I heard him say that he's concerned, or his concern comes, or he finds it to be a dangerous thing to be so certain. I
Yeah,
think that's probably the first person that I ever kind of heard throw that idea out there, that as a believer, as someone who believes in God, um, that sometimes our certainty can be the danger.
yeah,
Thinking that we know all the answers or have all of the answers figured out. And so I'm thankful, that you are coming to that premise and you sort of dug into that premise in your work today. And so tell us a little bit about um, some ways that people can utilize your work as a tool of spiritual reflection in light of the current administration. And
Mm-hmm.
we know that people have all kinds of views when it comes to this current administration. I call it the regime,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I don't see it as running on what we would think of as an actual administration. I don't see it as something that we're going to look back on and say, oh, this was a part of the traditional landscape of American leadership. I really do see it outside of that, just in the way that this administration has come in and postured itself as above the law. So, in light of that, and what we see happening in this current administration, what are some ways to utilize your work as a tool of spiritual reflection in light of that?
Wow, it's a very powerful question because I think that I meet a lot of believers that forget that the Black church and our leaders never thought that the separation of church and state meant that we don't talk about politics and faith, that we don't
Mm-hmm,
talk about injustice. And
mm-hmm,
I think that's a trick of the enemy. I also think one of the most dangerous things in politics or religion is the moment that the moment when certainty becomes more valuable than truth. And I think you
mm-hmm,
could use this book as a tool to help journey. Like I hope the book invites folks to slow down and ask questions. Ask
mm-hmm,
who taught me this? Uh, who benefits from me believing this? You know, whose
mm-hmm.
voices are missing? Uh, what is the benefit of producing or walking in this way and how I treat people? Like how is that making me treat people and walking in this way that this government, this regime, this the how you can like, oh, even on your social media platforms you can become very tunnel vision, like you're only hearing one thing, you're not actually talking to people. How is that
Mm-hmm.
making you treat people? You know, there's a piece in the book where I take small pauses in between the chapters and there's some letters, and I wrote a letter called I Love My Country. And when you read it,
And we're going to read it right now.
okay, okay.
That's actually one of the letters. There's two letters, but there's one, that one in particular, that I want us to read. And I like reading aloud. So either you can read it aloud or I can read it aloud.
Please go ahead.
All right. So let me do my due diligence here and let me make sure I'm doing this right.
Hmm.
Let me know when you see this tab pop up.
I see it.
All right. And is it big enough? Are the words big enough
Yes,
so
they're
that we
very.
can
I can
all
see
see
that
it
very
too?
well.
All right. So I'm going to read this segment because I thought it was very powerful. Um, and so let's hop into it. A letter about the people and places beneath the flag. Whoa, let's not go that far. Dear loved one, I want to share something that happened to me, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. I was eating with the homies and just talking, saying something we all say without slowing down. I love my country. But as soon as the words left my mouth, something inside me paused and got curious. Do I? What does that even mean? See, this is what happens when you start learning how to ask better questions. You begin catching yourself mid sentence. You start noticing when your mouth is moving faster than your understanding. You realize you're listening to more than one voice. You can hear your habits, your history, your body, your conscience, the spirit, the people around you. So instead of pushing forward, I stopped and I let the question lead. Does loving my country mean standing for the pledge, wearing the colors, posting the flag? That started to sound less like love and more like fandom, cheering from the stands and not stepping onto the field. So I looked up the word country. One definition stayed with me. A country is its people, not borders, not symbols, not slogans, people. The people, which means loving your country isn't about loyalty to ideas, it's about responsibility to humans. But here's the part that made me uncomfortable. Can I love people I refuse to learn about or from? That realization took me somewhere simple because I love plants. Many people say they love plants, especially on IG. We stage them, light them perfectly, and click, photograph them, caption them with a great hashtag. But real love shows up in care, in knowing what soil they need, how much light they can take, what harms them, and what helps them grow. Aesthetic affection isn't love, responsibility is. Then I got personal. I thought about my wife, Hannah. I assumed I was born knowing how to love her well. I watched romantic movies like The Notebook. I took the fun love quizzes and read all the advice. I thought effort was enough, but I didn't actually know her. And if I wanted to love her well, she had to become my teacher. Listening became my education, not talking, not fixing, listening. If I want to love the people in this country, the same rule applies. And we don't listen to each other very long. We design our lives around echo chambers. We unfollow discomfort. We mute voices that slow us down. But love doesn't grow in comfort zones, it grows in classrooms we're afraid to enter. And learning only matters if it changes how we live. Dr. King reminded us in his final sermon, The Drum Major Instinct, that everybody can be great because anybody can serve. So you don't need power to love your country. You don't need a microphone. You love your country in grocery lines, classrooms, churches, on the clock, and off the clock. How? By learning from people and listening longer, by choosing proximity over comfort, because the people are the country, not flags, people. And the wild part is this: I didn't arrive at this by trying to be progressive or woke. I arrived here because I learned how to pause and question my own language, because I learned how to sit with my own discomfort instead of rushing past it. That's what walking the way has been teaching me: not how to be louder, but how to be slower. Not how to dominate conversations, but how to stay present inside of them. Pay attention to what you say automatically and notice which words feel inherited instead of examined. That's not weakness, but formation. With you, Royce.
Thank you for reading that. That was special. I haven't heard another voice read it. That was special for me. I appreciate that. Again, I'm a new writer, so I really appreciate that. I
That that was very, very powerful. And one of the things that I sort of got out of that is, you know, we have this tendency, I know I do. Some people know me as the block queen. If you come through my page saying something sideways, I tend to block you. And
hmm
there has been times when I have reached for the block button and I felt that checker in my spirit, right?
hmm
I felt that pause to say, hold
hmm
up, little Miss Block Fingers.
hmm
Okay. And that pause sometimes says, why don't you ask a question?
hmm
Sometimes that pause leads to ask a different question. Like you
Yeah,
said, ask a better question. We have to give ourselves space to lean into what the pause is telling us to do.
I
So
agree.
whether that is ask a better question, ask why did you say that? Ask tell me or say tell me more. Give me more information. And so sometimes in the midst of my wanting to just, do the
Mm-hmm.
block, 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 right? Because, like you said, I don't want to be in an echo chamber. And we
Mm-hmm.
can find ourselves living in that echo chamber when we begin to shut out people who disagree with us. Now,
Agreed.
we're not talking about a fundamental difference of understanding who's human and who's not human. That's
Yes.
a whole other conversation.
Yes.
But we do tend to have almost a knee jerk reaction in this current climate that if somebody's coming with a different viewpoint, a different opinion, it's like we're automatically wanting to just write them off rather than lean in. And I think that's an important thing to note, especially when it comes to I know for me when it comes to black people, because
Mm-hmm.
in this space every day. I'm reading comments, I'm listening, I'm down in the weeds with people because I do
Mm-hmm.
want this to be a space of dialogue and conversation. And it was funny because one of the pictures, visual pictures that God gave me, he said, "Now I want you to understand, because of some of the traumas that have happened that are unique to Black Americans, it's gonna feel like sitting at a table." He gave me a visual and I made a little image of it just to remind myself. It's gonna feel like sometimes you're sitting at a table with nothing but porcupines
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because because everybody is prickly,
Yeah.
right? And in trying to move and connect, you've got to work your way through all of the needles.
Mm-hmm.
You got to work your way through that shell that many Black Americans, especially, are living with because of what lives in our body, because of the trauma,
Yes.
because of the history that we have. And that sometimes in trying to connect and in trying to reach out to people, you're going to get pricked.
Yes. 100%. I think that as we learn to ask better questions, for folks listening, I just want you to hear what we are not saying. Don't protect yourself.
Mhm,
You got to protect your body. You got to protect your peace. Um, what is being said is asking another question, slowing down is a good practice. And I
mhm,
think that that just helps us, especially in this day and age. So many different generations are experiencing different reactions and different responses to what's happening in um, in our neighborhoods, in our counties, in our states. Like and it branches out like that.
mhm,
And I think that you know a good practice, I think, is to slow down so you can ask yourself that if my patriotism is making me loyal to a symbol and indifferent to my neighbor, I need
mhm,
to question what kind of love that is.
mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, and I like the fact that your work is called, just in on the general topic here. I like the fact that your work is called The Way of Asking. One time I was doing my own personal study and reflection, and I thought about, we always talk about that particular spiritual principle about asking. And if you look at the words asking, seeking, and knocking, which are those three basic principles, it still spells ask.
I love it.
And then going a little bit further, um, that ask to me is asking, knowing, and accepting that you don't have the answers. And when you get to the seeking, I noticed one thing you talked about here is about sitting with whatever that thought is, not just moving past it. And so sometimes a part of our seeking is to sit with the information. It is to sit with the thought process. It is to sit with your own reflection of how you are thinking,
Yes.
and not moving past that. And then knocking, knowing that you don't know it all, but also knowing. that you have a relationship with the one who does,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know. And
And I think
so
all
I
of those
that
things to me say action. I
hmm
think that a lot of times we're not taking, I have a conversation with someone yesterday. I was saying like we doing the work means actually doing the work. Like there's some action in asking, in seeking,
hmm
in knocking. Like it's a full body spirit thing to like learn and grow from. And we have to protect those three things. And in protecting those three things, mind, body, spirit, you have to use those three things to learn and grow. Um, and so I hope that, thank you so much for reading that. I hope that, the practices or the tool that someone can utilize in reflection is give yourself time to like slow down, reflect,
hmm
ask the questions. And if the question leads you to another question, that's great, you know? And that's the beauty of it. The certainty of things change.
hmm
Questions can continue to lead you towards what's beautiful.
And so I want to go to the second reading that was churning as I was reading, and then we'll come back to the next question.
Okay,
This is the second section that I wanted to share,
thank you.
and let me make sure that I set it up here. Make sure I'm in the right space. Because this is something that we talk about quite a bit on this platform. Um, we have people from all kinds of spiritual disciplines who are in this space. We have everything from your most Orthodox Christian to Ethiopian Christians, all the way through to Wicca, to atheist, to Catholic, to no belief at all, agnostic. So
It's beautiful.
there's a spectrum of belief and non-belief here.
Hmm.
And I feel like that we've been able to cultivate a space where people know that you are first human here,
Hmm.
that you're first human here.
I love it.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that basic premise. I always tell people, if you focus in on your basic premise, are you human? Am I human? Can you honor me for being a part of the human family? Can you honor me being a part of the Imago Dei, right? Made in the image of the Creator. And even if you do not believe in a Creator, because I believe in a Creator, I honor your humanity, right? You don't have to believe in Creator the way I do in order for me to see you as a human being that is worthy of dignity and worthy of respect and worthy of the ability to exist without fear, to exist without tyranny, to exist from under oppression. And so, because we, you know, curated this space to deal with that, a lot of times we get people in this space who are deconstructing, right? We get people in this space who are questioning their faith, and they're coming with different questions about, maybe an experience that happened in their past, and they're now just now coming to a place where they're reckoning with what's happened, or they're in therapy about what has happened in their life. And so I want to read this because I feel like it answers some questions that people might be having out here. Do you mind if I read it?
Please, please.
All right. Let me get back to my space here. All right. A letter about the compromise became a religion. Dear loved one, there's a moment when you wake up and realize the whole landscape around you has shifted. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you finally started noticing what had been there the entire time. The stories don't shine the way they used to. The trusted voices don't land the same in your chest. And the people shouting truth the loudest often seem the least willing to examine where their version of it came from. Somewhere in that noticing, a question starts forming. If so much of what we inherited feels compromised, what do we build our lives on now? I've watched people answer that question in two very different ways. Some decide to trust nothing, others decide to defend everything. Both responses make sense. Both come from survival, and both eventually leave us isolated. One builds a city with no accountability, and the other builds a city with no tables. I'm writing to both. To my loved ones whose distrust became a survival skill, your suspicion didn't come from nowhere, it was learned, earned, reinforced. Tuskegee wasn't a rumor, it was policy. Flint's water didn't become poisoned by accident, it stayed that way through neglect. Black women were sterilized without consent, not centuries ago, but within living memory. Black boys are still convicted on perception before evidence. Hospitals still doubt Black pain unless it screams. When you live inside systems like that, distrust stops feeling like cynicism and starts feeling like wisdom. And I understand why. But I've also learned something hard. When distrust becomes your compass, you spend your life walking in circles. You stay armored even when you're safe. You build walls even when you're hungry for connection. You survive, but you don't get to rest. And we were never meant to live in self defense forever. To my loved ones who defend everything, I see your longing for foundation and clarity, your need for something solid in a world that keeps shifting. You're not wrong for wanting truth that holds up under pressure, but sometimes the way we defend turns truth into a fortress. The doors get welded shut, questions get treated like threats, and certainty becomes more important than humility. I had to ask myself a hard question here. Who taught me to defend the way I defend? Which institutions shaped my arguments? Which voices were centered as authoritative? Which histories were treated as footnotes or ignored altogether? It struck me how often Black and Brown believers are taught to protect theological frameworks that were never designed with them in mind. How frequently African thinkers like Athanasius, Tertullian, Augustine, and Cyprian are honored in name but stripped of their context, geography, and embodiment. Their Africanness softened, their Blackness blurred, their proximity to whiteness is quietly assumed. I'm asking, are we defending truth or defending the people who taught us their version of it? Because there is a difference. To my Black family, I need to say this plainly and gently. Your body carries memory. Your melanin holds history. Your afro is not an accident, but it is architecture. Your lineage did not begin in chains. It stretches back beyond empire, beyond colonization, beyond the maps that tried to shrink our story. There's a powerful possibility that our blood remembers the people of the book and not the westernized version, but the desert walking, drum keeping, dark skinned ones. Our spirituality is not borrowed, it is inherited. It is how our ancestors kept breathing when every system tried to suffocate them. I don't say this because God belongs to one people group, but because history, our history, is wider than we were told. And yet, even knowing this, I had to confront something uncomfortable in myself. I noticed how quickly we dismiss things labeled conspiracy, how fast we laugh and block or change the subject. And then years later, when the truth finally surfaces, we shrug and move on like it didn't cost anyone their life, their land, their sanity. That kind of forgetting is not neutral. That's how harm resets and how trauma becomes tradition. It's how hate learns to speak with a religious authority. I didn't come to this realization angry. I came grieving, grieving how often faith was used to protect power instead of people, and how easily certainty replaced curiosity, grieving how distrust and defense are both born from pain and hardened into identities. I don't believe the answer is to burn everything down. I believe the answer is to build differently, not towers, but tables, not fortresses, but communities, not certainty as control, but truth as relationship. If you don't have the strength to build right now, find a table. Sit, breathe, let someone else hold the questions for a while. If you do have the strength, don't waste it polishing theology while forgetting why faith exists in the first place. Tables are for people with messy stories. Tables are for laughter that interrupts grief and tears that don't need fixing. Tables are for healing between bites. Our compromise became a religion, but it doesn't have to stay that way. Cheers.
Hmm. I'm getting emotional listening to those words. They still mean so much. Just, just writing them. They're still really close. Like I said at the beginning, like this was less of me having something figured out, and more of
Mhm.
me hoping that it's a bit of a window into how slowing down and asking questions and writing can teach you along the way. Um, yeah.
Yeah. That whole thing was powerful to me because I know that probably for the last 14 years, we've gone through a process. I know with my ministry, Life Nation, we've gone through a process of just taking people line by line, precept by precept, concept by concept, founder by founder, um, ideology by ideology, and getting down to the bare knuckles of what we have been taught,
Hmm.
and what we have believed. And I often jokingly, a lot of people use this now, but I was one of the first people that was saying it. I often say Kenny Loggins Christ is not coming to save you.
Yeah.
Kenny Loggins Christ is an ideology. It's tied to westernized, colonized versions of the faith, um, and that iteration tied into what we know now, and what people acknowledge now as Christian nationalism or white Christian nationalism, because there's the white Christian nationalism, and then there are Christian nationalists who are not white, but they still have that mindset.
Yeah.
Because those things are tied together. As a black person, W.E.B. Du Bois talked about the two soulness of black people.
Yeah.
And I want to say, even with the black Christian, is actually three soulness,
Hmm.
because it's what they feel about their belief in their faith, that they now have to, a lot of people are now having to separate
Yeah.
their belief from their westernized, colonized version. And then you have, as you said, as you start digging and you start reading and you start studying, you start looking at some of these founders, and you start seeing how their Africanness has been erased.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was a very long time before, when I started doing my own digging, it was a very long time before I even realized that those people were African,
Yes.
because nobody ever said they're African.
Mm.
They just gave you the founders' names, and they left sort of an assumption there for you
Yeah.
to fill in.
And their names were definitely changed, and as they were in their presenting.
Mhm,
Some people would say they would take on a Christian name, which
mhm,
in other words means a European facing name.
Hmm.
It's I'm sorry to cut you off, but yes, I agree. I think that's beautiful that um, taking those taking those questions, what you've been doing in your community, to just show, the painting close up and then far away,
Hmm.
um, and practicing that balance of sometimes let's back up so we can see all of it, and then let's
Hmm.
pick a piece to zoom in on and get closer to it and ask all those
Right.
questions. Why was this done this way? Why is that textured in that way? Who did
Hmm.
and I think those things just like build a beautiful um, formation in our lives. And I think we just, you know, you know, want to be deeply formed people in the way that we treat each other, in the way that we treat ourselves.
Hmm. I often say, when I have my prayer and meditation time, I allow the spirit to give me certain things, and those things that resonate with me are things that I begin to take into my daily practice. And so when we talk about intentional things that help us, help ground us mentally, one
Hmm.
of those things for me is those daily affirmations, like sit with it. That's one that I often share with people outwardly, but it's because I'm doing that inward work, right? I'm having to sit with whatever truths I need to reflect upon, and not, like you said, not move on from what God or what the spirit is trying to show you. Another one is treat you sacred. One time I was just sitting and I was reflecting and I was tired and I was just feeling really, really exhausted. And the spirit just came to me and said, you often treat other people sacred. You often treat other people as if you know that they are crown jewels to me. You look outwardly at people's souls, and the way that you look at them, you understand that if you're seeing them, you're seeing God. If you're seeing them, then you're seeing the maker of the universe. And so as you're having that thought in mind, why aren't you having that thought in mind about yourself?
Mm.
And it was an immediate conviction.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And so that immediate conviction became treat you sacred. And
Yeah.
so that's something that every morning that I'm getting up now, I'm having that mantra in mind. Is what I'm doing treating myself sacred? Whether it's the conversation that I let myself into, whether it's my actions with other people, whether it's the yes that I'm giving for the day or the no that I have to give for the day that might not be pleasant, but it needs to be given, because the premise is I've got to treat myself sacred.
Hmm.
I cannot hold a sacred thing for long in health without treating myself sacred.
I agree.
Because everything that I'm trying to hold, if I'm not holding it in sacredness in myself, those things are going to either burn me out or burn me through,
100%.
you know.
Hmm.
And so tell me a little bit about some intentional things that help ground you mentally, as we're sort of navigating what I call this anti-truth, anti-democracy moment in America.
Yes. I would agree very heavy with you. I think one of the biggest things I've learned is I can't carry everybody's awakening.
Mm, listen.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
I can't carry everybody's awakening, and I have to protect my intention. I have to protect um, my space so I can slow down. I like to write with my you know I write however I can, but if I can get pen and paper, it really does help uh, me not move as fast. Journaling, verbally, like there's many ways to do this, guys. I think that sometimes we think about journaling and we even that is intimidating because we think we have to write. but
Mhm.
a sentence, a word, a drawing, um, even getting your phone, turning on your voice memo, and just talking. Um, Journaling is helping me slow down. I pray differently. Um, I pray less of God make this happen, and I pray more God help me be present so I can see what is happening.
Mhm.
Um, I stay in relationship with real people, not with algorithms. Uh,
Mm. See, hold that thought.
I stay in relationship with real people. It's easy to be in a relationship with an algorithm. Um, I try to sleep, take care of my body. Um, uh, I try to practice not talking as much too, just listening. Um, and kind of with not carrying everyone's awakening, like also realizing that I don't have to respond to every lie that I see.
Mm.
Um,
Stay right there.
yes, like I don't have to. Um, and there's time. Okay, a friend of mine, a poet, his name's David Gate. He says that create drunk, respond sober.
Mm.
Meaning, emotionally, we can get drunk with emotions, anger, fear, doubt, happiness, joy. Create with that big belly of emotion.
Mhm.
Don't respond to anybody while you are drowning, while you're drunk in anger or drunk
Mhm.
in whatever that is. And I think that sometimes we are all on social media, and sometimes you pass by um, a social media billboard and you see a lie, and we want to respond to it, but I don't have to respond to that lie. I don't have to respond to it physically and mentally. I don't have
Mhm.
to respond to it. um, and because I believe that sometimes, or a lot of times, uh, resistance, protest, is refusing to let chaos um, have a space in my soul. And I think that that's beautiful. I think joy is protest.
Absolutely. I often say joy is a sacred rebellion.
Yes.
It's a sacred rebellion. Um, I know we've talked about a lot tonight.
Mhm.
But I have one final question,
Mhm.
and that is ultimately when you think about sort of just take a moment to think about your themes that you have running through your work. What do you want readers to take away from your writing and the message of your music?
Hmm. Permission. If I had to say it in one word, I want I want folks who are reading, listening, um, I want them to take away permission. You have permission to ask hard questions, big questions. You have permission to ask every question. That you have permission to slow down. If you feel like no one has given you the permission to become a student, you have permission to do that. I talk about that a little bit in my book, of like how I had to become a student again of my own questions. And even that brought back some insecurities and some challenges. Um, You have permission to heal. You have permission to seek out healing. You have permission to listen and not talk. You have permission to be uncertain.
Mhm.
Yeah. Even in the EP series that I'm working on, I'm hoping that people, when they feel it, when they hear it, they they heal, they hear and feel the same thing, that the emotions that we walk through every day, the ground that we become every day. I think we become ground at different moments too. Like I think that in the morning we might be, harder ground to talk to, harder ground for seeds to grow. I think later on in the day, like something might happen and we become softer ground. Like no matter how our day is moving, um, places where we have rocks or weeds or no water, I think that in all of those spaces, permit if we give ourselves permission, then what enters in, whether you believe or not, grace, the definition of grace still means the same thing. Like you have grace, you're giving yourself grace, and the people around you grace. Like have permission. Yeah.
And yeah, I saw as I was reading, I saw you began to, as you're using some of the plant analogies. I just finished a series I was teaching called Like the Tree. And so I learned a lot about why the creator says you will be like a tree planted. Things I learned about the trees, like leaves actually have mouths, and they don't just have one mouth, they have several mouths. And so when I go back and I read text about how, the trees will praise him, right? The trees literally have mouths. They literally have eyes. A plant can sense, and especially on a tree, a plant can sense when an animal has touched it versus a human has
Yeah.
touched it.
Yeah. Wow.
It holds memory. Um, and so all of those things that you just learn from nature begin to shape and inform how you handle yourself in the world as a part of God's creation. And learning from those things. And one of the plants I have now that I'm learning about, early in the morning until about noon, it will come out and it will bloom these beautiful flowers. And you have to catch the flowers while they're blooming, because right around 12:30, 1 o'clock, I come back and those flowers have closed back up. And so, you talk about the timing of things. When is a good time to bloom? When is it time when you have to close back up?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lesson that we can all learn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another thing that the spirit told me some years ago that I have incorporated in my own life is the University of Quiet. He said, even as you're sitting with it, I need you to join and enroll in the University of Quiet.
Yeah.
There's certain things you've got to learn in the quietness of yourself. Quiet yourself, quiet your soul. Stop everything else become letting the noise fill your soul.
Yeah.
Make space for the silence, because in the silence you'll begin to hear the spirit speak to you.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I see people online telling all their business, I jokingly say, hey, there's a university called the University of Quiet, and I think you might want to enroll today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But like you said, with your journal, about tools that we can use to think about how we're managing ourselves, how we navigating this anti-truth, anti-democracy movement, even when you feel like the truth is being crowded out by the lies, right? And sometimes I know in these spaces we feel like truth is being suppressed, right? It's being pulled down in the algorithm. And it seems like the people who have the biggest mic have the loudest voice and the biggest lies. But guess what? In that space of journaling, you can curate and hold on to the truths that you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, even when you're putting the truth out there, like you said, in your work, sometimes we make fun of or we laugh at what people call conspiracy,
Mm-hmm.
but then further down the line we find it to be the truth. And I say it's not a conspiracy if it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a conspiracy if it can be proven.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes we have to hold on to what we know is true and what we know is right. And sometimes those things have to be taken offline.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be preserved for the future.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I have put something out into the ether, as they say, and right before I hit publish, it disappears. And so I've learned that, hey, before I want to go to the screen, let me take it to my 1001 journals I have in front of me. I got a journal for several different topics, but let me journal it first.
Yeah.
And then if there's something that needs to be extracted out of that for the general public, then I'll put that out,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And so now when I'm writing for the public, it's not even the fullness of what I've written in my journal, but it is what is extracted. And journaling, like you said, also gives you an opportunity to slow down.
Yeah.
It allows you to go and sit with your own history about what you thought about something. It's not a fleeting thought anymore. I can go back to it. I can go back to my memory. I can go back to what I believed. And even in that belief possibly changing, I can say, here's what I thought then, here's what I know now. But if we're not slowing down, like you said, if we're not slowing down, we're not even taking the time to even process how we've changed. We're not taking that time. And so um, I think that this is an important work. I hope that people will come out and support your work. Your work, The Way of Asking, is available
Mm-hmm.
wherever books are sold. I have seen it everywhere. And so we definitely want people to support your work, support the writing, support the music. RoyceLovett.com, you can go to his website
Yes.
and sign up for his email. Also, his social media connections are also there if you're interested in connecting through the various platforms that Royce is on. And I look forward to hearing this EP that is in the works. Final thoughts. I'm going to give you the final thought for tonight. What would you like to say as we close out?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been a blessing for me, healing to me. Um, and thank you to everybody listening. First time, I've been a writer for a long time, but I've never done this. And so this has been teaching and healing. And if you're a writer listening, um, do the work, you know, set the goal and do the work. And I guess the last final thought I leave is um, God is not afraid of your questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Royce, it's been a pleasure. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, Black Table Talk Edition, and I have been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to evil, so I encourage you to go out and be light. Take care, everyone. Be well, and most importantly, be light. Royce, will you hang tight backstage in just a minute? Take care.